Hey everyone, I'm Kata Frederick and welcome. Today I'm going to be presenting about WordPath, which is a mobile application that provides a highly customizable word learning journey. Um, it's great for specific language learning purposes, so let's jump right in. So here's Victor. Victor is an adjunct professor. He's a freelance designer. He's super busy, super creative. And his learning is driven by epiphanies, realizations, and projects. So Victor will get an idea in his head about something really specific that he's working on, and he'll need to learn either new vocabulary or sometimes a new language based on his specific projects. His background, he studied intermedia and performance. He speaks a bunch of languages already, like Portuguese, Spanish, and English. He's currently learning a little bit of German. He's from Brazil, but he's currently located in Brooklyn, New York. So some of the problems that Victor encounters as he's trying to learn vocabulary and language is that he needs to be able to focus on specific project goals. He also needs to be able to translate really quickly. So if he's working on a project and he needs a specific word, he needs to kind of wrap that into his studies as fast as possible. And sometimes he wants charts and graphs, both that break down the structure of language and also that monitor the progress that he's making as he learns new vocabulary. And to sum it up, he kind of really just needs to be able to customize as much as possible so that his learning feels meaningful and productive. So overall, Victor really wants to tailor his experience with a language learning app to specific project-based goals. But currently, he can't really do that because a lot of the current language learning apps that are available aren't super customizable in terms of paths that are given for learning specific languages. So some of the other challenges he's facing are time. He needs to be able to study in short spurts, but also longer sessions. He needs to be able to customize. He needs to target specific themes. He also is sort of a visual learner. He wants to see the language broken down. He also wants to see his progress broken down. And finally, he wants to be able to translate words. He wants to be able to look them up with his voice. He wants to be able to type them in, and he wants to add that to the track of learning that he's currently focused on. So in early prototypes for developing an app for this demographic of people, there was a lot of data-heavy intro screens. So some of the ideas we played with were showing all of the different paths and the progress users have made on those, and then sort of breaking down the different paths that they could take to study. So this is sort of a data-heavy home screen. We also didn't really have a search in the main menu bar. It was mostly focused on the path and adding something, but there wasn't really any search at the main home screen. Also, there was the voice translation was a little bit hard to find. There was an add button, but not really, as we said, no search and no translation that was super quick and easy to access. And finally, the learning paths were a bit confusing. They were sort of all crunched down here, and again, sort of a data-heavy representation of what was going on here. So we changed things up a little bit. Here's the home screen, pretty simple. For the first user testing, we stuck with this data-heavy intro screen, sort of focusing heavily on the visuals. We had the user search with a voice, so you could translate, enter your voice. Ultimately, this translate button ended up being a little bit confusing, but we'll get into that in a moment. And finally, there was the possibility to type something in, which, again, was a little bit confusing to the user as we went through it. So as we entered the usability test plan, some of the specific tasks we wanted to make sure users were able to do were the following. So first, we wanted them to be able to navigate through the home screen easily and sign up and get right into learning. So we wanted to see that they could do that quickly. Next, we wanted them to be able to study flashcards, so be able to find their way to the flashcards in the UX intro path. Third, we wanted them to be able to search a word using their voice. And finally, we wanted to search a word by typing it in. So here's what happened. It turns out that when they were searching, it was a little unclear when they were signing up which buttons were which, so we gave a little bit more prompting here. Sign up with Facebook or Gmail and create an account, username and password. And as you'll encounter as we move through, the color coding after the user testing became a little bit more specific. So here this blue is indicating an action that needs to be taken. And again, you'll see that blue over here. Another action that can be taken is adding a new path to the subjects. We also made a little bit more of a detailed menu here at the bottom. So you see the home, and now the search is a lot easier to access. And this search specifically indicates typing something in. You'll see this when you search in your Gmail or other places. So this indicates the typing. And then this microphone here we also added to the bottom to make translating with your voice a little bit easier. And finally, we simplified the home screen a little bit. We got rid of that data-heavy intro home screen. And the data, as we'll encounter, we moved it down here, but eventually it's going to move somewhere else. We also differentiated between the typing and the voice recording search screens. This just simplifies one task per screen. And it makes it a little bit easier for the user to understand what they're doing and where they need to move. We made some more clarity in the search features. For example, we said, here's what I heard, because after a user records with their voice, the word will show up here so that they know that it's been heard correctly. Before, we didn't really have this prompt, so folks were a little bit confused about what this screen was if they were recording their voice. And we made the record button a lot bigger and a lot more clear. We also sort of color-coded throughout, as you saw earlier. Here we have all of the onboarding information is its own specific color. So whenever you see this color along with a dialog box, you know that that's just sort of giving you hints about what to do and how to move through the application. And again, you'll see this blue color coding to indicate that this is an actionable item that you need to sort of make a decision and press to move through. So the next steps, we're thinking about moving this data to over here when you select your path. And we're going to change this to make it an add button so folks can type in manually to add flashcards, to add information that they would like to be studying. And finally, we're going to make the progress and the data available once you pick your path. So you pick your path, and here you have the UX path chosen. It's indicated at the top here. And you've got your different subtopics under that path available here to choose. For example, general terms, working with a particular client, adding something new. So up here, we'll make the progress in that path available and a little bit of data about progress that's being made, as well as charts that might be applicable to languages, such as conjugations and stuff like that. So that'll be available at the top of the path after someone selects specifically what they're going to be working on. And overall, just to wrap it up, some of the learnings that we made as we were working on this application and testing some users were that clarity in populated fields was really important. So as we were making usability test plans, we noticed that initially we populated a field to indicate what it might look like if a user had typed it in, because they're not able to type in during that specific user testability. User testing interaction. But the users were really confused by this. So we noticed that if something said persona, they were like, I don't know why this says this. So we removed all of that suggestion, and it was a lot more clear after there was actually nothing in the boxes where words would be typed. We also noticed, as mentioned, that the colors really guide choices. Users responded highly to specific color use. If a color was used to distinguish an actionable step, they looked to take an action the next time they encountered that color. And finally, notice that too much data is confusing. We want to make data accessible, but not necessarily the main focal feature. And that wraps up this presentation on WordPath. Thanks so much for listening.